Hey there, fellow podcasters. I am Dan Benjamin. I'm here today to talk to you about mic technique. That's right, how to talk into a microphone. It sounds so simple, and yet there's so much that you could do wrong. Trust me, I've made every mistake you could possibly make. But before we start talking about mic technique, I want to ask if you could please like and subscribe. That's very important. It's a new channel still, so every like really helps. Every subscription really helps. It makes a huge difference, and you're doing me a huge favor by doing that. And also hit the little bell thing so you know when I come out with a new video. Now that that's over with, mic technique. Now, as you can see, I've got this microphone here is on a boom, and I'm in my little studio, and I'm talking into the microphone, and it should sound pretty good. But how are you going to know if it sounds good if you can't hear yourself? So this is one of the first things that I tell podcasters, and you would be shocked how many podcasters, advanced podcasters, don't do this one thing. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about listening to yourself, wearing a set of headphones. That will completely change how you address the microphone because you're going to hear how you sound. Now, you're going to notice I'm not wearing them for most of this video. Why? Because I've been talking into pretty much this microphone or one just like it for like 15 years, every day, hours a day. I know exactly where I need to be to this guy to sound good. You will know that too, but in order to get there, you've got to monitor and you've got to use a set of headphones to do it. One of the complaints I hear from a lot of people, they'll say, but I don't like the sound of my voice. The problem is you're just not used to it. I don't think that it's that you don't like it. You're just not yet used to hearing your own voice the way everybody else has always heard your voice. You're used to hearing it basically through your inner ear, through bone conductivity and things like that. So what you think of as my voice is very different from what everyone else thinks of as your voice. And that's no big deal. You just need to get used to it. And you do that how? By podcasting more, listening to yourself more. Eventually, you will get used to it. A lot of microphones and a lot of audio interfaces have a headphone jack built right into them. That's really awesome because then that means with very low latency, you're going to be able to hear yourself talking exactly as your guests hear you and as your listeners will hear you. And it's very, very useful. So step one in having good mic technique is actually monitoring yourself, listening to yourself, and that will teach you how to address the mic properly. So this is the second section that I want to talk about. As you may have noticed, I'm not speaking directly into the microphone. I'm kind of talking over it, kind of almost at a 45-degree angle to the microphone. That's because the way that I talk and the way that this microphone works together. I've had other microphones where maybe I'd have them on a boom like this one, where I might have it hanging down and I might have it right in front of me. The microphone is going to determine that too. And how do you know? By listening. You want to listen to yourself through the microphone and find out the exact right placement for it. But as a general rule, you want to be about 2 inches away from the microphone. That is the distance between your mouth and the end of the microphone. And I'll show you that with another microphone here once I get to talking about pop shields. Why don't I talk about pop shields? This foam material that's built into this microphone, this one right here, that acts as a pop filter or what's also called a pop shield, and that prevents plosives, that is sounds that begin with a P or a T, little explosive sounds, right? It stops those from being picked up as loudly as it would if there was no covering over the microphone. Many microphones have what they will say are built-in pop filters. The Shure SM7, which is this mic that I'm talking into now, my old trusty Shure SM7b, this does have this one that's sort of, I guess you call it built in. The Heil PR-40, you can get one that just sits right above it. And then if you're on like a Shure SM7, which a lot of people have, here's one of them, and you can see this pop shield is right in front of the microphone. And if I twist this up, you can see that it will sit right about like that. And so when I'm speaking through this microphone, I'll be talking to it the same way that I would. It's about, I'm gonna get rid of this thing. It's about 2 inches away. So I want my mouth to be about 2 inches away from the edge, the end of the microphone. And of course, where you speak into the microphone is going to be different depending on which microphone you have. This is called a front address microphone, which means you kind of talk into the front. Side address, you'd be talking into the side. It doesn't really change that much about your mic technique per se, except in knowing how far or close you want to be to the microphone. Another thing that I want you to keep in mind is something called proximity effect. And that is the closer you get to a microphone, the boomier and bassier your voice is going to get. And that can be fun if you want to do some kind of funny effect or make your voice sound deep and low. But generally speaking, you don't want to be that close to it because it'll get boomy. And on a lot of headphones, and certainly car speakers and home stereo speakers, that boominess is just not something you want. So try not to get too close to it. The third thing I want to talk about are the type of microphone, not front address or side address, but whether it's a dynamic or a condenser microphone. Like many podcasters, I prefer, and broadcasters for that matter, I prefer a dynamic microphone for this type of work. That's because dynamic microphones are really good at isolating sound, so that they only pick up the sound that's directly in front of them. They're not going to hear your kids shouting in the other room. They're not going to hear your neighbor's dog. They're not going to hear the air conditioning turning on and off. They're just going to hear you right in front of it. Yeah, some of those things might get picked up a little, but by the nature of a dynamic microphone, they're better at capturing just the voice. And I can give you an example of how good they actually are. If I'm just talking to you like this and I step to the side slightly or move my head or turn my head a little bit, listen to the difference in the volume. Now, keep in mind that I do use a little bit of compression on the audio before I release this just to keep the highs and lows. So it's going to artificially boost when I get a little quiet, but ignoring that, listen to the difference when I just step to the right just a little bit, how much more quiet I become. And then when I come back, I'm loud again. Imagine someone in the next room. You're not even going to hear them. Imagine your podcast co-host across the table. Their audio from their microphone, or from their voice rather, isn't going to get picked up by your microphone, only theirs. You can get dynamic microphones in all variety of sizes, shapes, and prices. I'll put a link to a couple of them down below. So look for that. Any price range. I mean, you can get them very inexpensively where they're just USB and they just plug right into your computer, all the way up to, something like a Shure SM7, which is about $399, I think, all the way up to thousands of dollars, which you probably don't need if you're just podcasting. The second type of microphone is a condenser microphone. Condenser microphones are wonderful because they pick up a really rich, warm depth of sound that you can't get from, to be honest, you can't get from except maybe the highest level of and most expensive dynamic mics. You just won't get that. But with a condenser microphone, you have that live, rich sound. And that's why it's used so much in the recording industry for doing really high-end voiceovers or for artists who are singing, because it picks up that richness and depth. That's not to say that you can't get a good sound out of a dynamic mic. You can, and probably every radio broadcast you've ever heard, and many, if not most podcasts, professional podcasts you've heard, use a dynamic mic for the reasons that I stated. So knowing which kind of mic you have is also important, because a condenser microphone is going to pick up a lot more noise. They are going to hear your neighbor's kids. They are going to hear your air conditioning turning on and off. They are going to hear that little hum or buzz from your computer screen. So just keep that in mind, and how close or far you need to be from the microphone is also going to be different if you're using a condenser than if you're using a dynamic mic. And the last thing I'd add is dynamic mics tend to be tougher, physically tougher. I have knocked around and banged around this microphone and other ones so many times, and they're fine. And unfortunately, in a past life, I've destroyed a condenser microphone before just by being a little too rough with it. Why am I rough with microphones? I don't know. I guess I have a problem. But anyway, basic mic technique, things you want to remember: always listen to yourself 2 inches away from the microphone. Know the type of microphone that you're using so that you can adjust your proximity effect and the angle that you have to speak over it. And that's about it. That's about all I can think of to tell you about how to have good mic technique. Oh, there's one more thing I will add, and that is a lot of people write into me and say, what about the ums and the ahs and the mouth sounds and things like that? Mouth sounds, that's something you are just going to have to stop doing, whether it's smacking your lips or swallowing or other little sounds like that. That can be tremendously improved by being a little farther away from the microphone, by having good mic technique, talking over it instead of right into it, not keeping it right up against your mouth, keeping that 2-inch distance away. That'll really help you. And really, that's the key to eliminating the mouth noises, breath noises, and things like that. And of course, like I said, a condenser mic is going to pick those up even more. It will. The ums and the ahs, that's training. First of all, a few ums and ahs now and again, that's normal. Everyone does that in a conversation. And when you're podcasting most of the time, you're having a conversation with someone. So it's normal to say or ah. Don't worry about that, and don't feel like you need to edit those out. They're part of a normal conversation. But if you're doing your own editing work and you are in charge of that part of the production process, you're going to catch them and you're going to hear them, and you're going to be able to eliminate them from your vocabulary, if you will. It just takes time and practice. Stop expecting so much from your first podcast or your 50th or your 500th. We're always getting better all the time. We're always working and improving those kinds of things. So if you don't like the ums and the ahs in there, don't edit them out. Leave them in there and teach yourself a lesson so that you get better. And that's all I've got to say about that. Again, thanks so much for listening and watching. And if you have a topic you want me to cover or a question you want me to answer, please ask it in the comments below. I would love to hear your questions. I would love to answer them either there in the comments, or maybe they'll inspire me to make a new video, which I would love to do for y'all. So thanks for joining me. Don't forget, smash the subscribe button, like, and ring the bell. It'll help me, it'll help the channel. And that's all for today. See you next time.